Your seats. We are going to start in a minute.
Thank you. Bye.
Almost in the last leg of our meeting, and we hope that we'll maintain the same spirit of cooperation that we have always been having throughout the week. As you might have seen, the CRP document that we promised became available an hour ago or so. Just to apologize that it was not available in all languages as we had expected. There are always some technical challenges when we are working with limited time. So I hope that during as we continue our discussions, those documents will be available in all languages. So we really ask for your understanding, and hopefully we could proceed, bearing in mind the time limitations that we have. And this is our last chance to finalize these documents. So thank you very much for your understanding. This evening we are going to go through the CRP document as indicated earlier on. As you might have seen, the CRP document has tried to capture everything that was raised during the contact groups, the sessions of the COW, and through the whole process we have had revising the non-papers and then getting feedback on what is missing and what are the gaps, what are the improvements. So almost everything, as you can see, has been reflected in the CRP document. We hope that this evening will not be taking new textual proposals, because we have had a lot of opportunities to do that in the COW, in the contact groups, and even yesterday we spent the whole day trying to accommodate new elements until today. So we hope that we'll just focus on minor editorial issues. Maybe if something has not been represented exactly the way it was supposed to, but we are really hoping that we will not spend time collecting new textual suggestions at this moment. Now, before we proceed, I'll just give a chance for the Secretariat just to explain some of the minor changes that have been made and give an overview of what changes have been done, corrections that the Secretariat has undertaken. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Where we didn't put the right word in, and they will be corrected in the LDoc, so just so that you don't have to raise it and take the floor for it. So paragraph 9b, the last part of the sentence in brackets currently says for user registration and click-wrap agreements. And it should read for user registration through click-wrap agreements. So that will be corrected in the LDoc. And then there's a second mistake we caught, which is in paragraph 19 in the last line. It currently says, on the basis of the work of an expert group established with the terms of reference provided in enclosure D. And it should write on the basis of the work of a group established with the terms of reference provided in enclosure D. So this will also be corrected in the LDoc. Thank you.
That have been spotted, and as indicated, no need to bring them on the floor because they will be corrected as indicated by the Secretariat. You might also recall that before we went for our break, we had set up a small group to discuss issues that were pertaining to what is now paragraph 20 with regards to disbursement. We'll get a report from that group when we get to that paragraph. For now, we'll go straight into the discussion of the CRP document, and we'll begin paragraph by paragraph, looking firstly at the annex, and then we'll take further steps later on. All right, so we'll now go into looking at the paragraphs. Like indicated, we are not expecting that we'll accommodate textual proposals at this stage. What we want you to observe is if there are any minor changes to the suggestions that you made, maybe that were not captured as needed, and then we'll proceed like that because we really want to maximize the use of our time this evening. I see EU, it's a comment on the procedure. All right, you have the floor.
It's a comment on the procedure to the extent that we have observed that the annex has a footnote on the first page. And we do recall that indeed such a statement had been made, but we deem it's not appropriate that that would be a footnote to the annex. We would request that that statement be incorporated in the report of the meeting where it has its rightful place. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Indeed, there is a footnote, and like rightly observed, it could also find its place in the meeting report. And I would just like to see if there is any objection to that, because I think that will make us have a more focused annex, and all the issues that need to be raised of concerns would then be reflected in the report. Is there any objection to that proposal? I don't see any, so I think we'll move this to the report. Now, we'll try to move quickly, if possible, noting that we are just looking at the minor editorial changes. And I'll start to check if there are any minor changes or editorial changes for paragraph 1, 2, and 3. EU.
Very much, Madam Co-Chair. It's not a change to any of the text, it's a change in location. I think logically paragraph 3 should actually come after paragraph 4 because it refers to the options that are in paragraph 4. So we would just request that the text as is without any changes be moved after paragraph 4.
Does make the logical sense in terms of the arrangement of the paragraph. I now have IPLCs 1165.
We just do want to make a quick remark that we believe that 3A is not, as it's written, compliant with Nagoya Article 6, genetic resources, or Nagoya Article 7 on access to traditional knowledge. We don't think this is intentional, but the way it reads, it says it's subject only to national legislation. We believe we've made decisions here in the COP that have a little bit more elaborate requirements for the handling the traditional knowledge. We're concerned providers is not really sufficient to qualify. It's really the traditional knowledge holders that have the right to decide whether it should traditional knowledge should be disclosed. Provider could be an academic who's done research. So again, we'll be addressing this, I'm sure, in the COP, but we wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
I think that's for noting, so it has been noted. Thank you very much for making that point. With that, I'll move forward to paragraph 4. I have Chile followed by EU.
Antes de hacer una corrección o proponer una corrección menor a las propuestas, quiero expresar el agradecimiento por parte de nuestra delegación al esfuerzo que han hecho ambos copresidentes y a la Secretaría en generar un texto que busca capturar de manera clara y precisa las distintas opciones y de esa manera tratar de hacernos la vida más fácil durante la COP. Es evidente que hay muchos corchetes en el texto, pero eso no es responsabilidad de ustedes. Nosotros somos los culpables de que hayan esos corchetes. Lo importante es que las ideas estén bien claras y bien capturadas para que luego avancemos en una negociación para hacer una selección de las opciones que sean más apropiadas para un consenso. Dicho eso, la propuesta que queremos agregar, que es un cambio editorial menor, pero que permite dar más claridad a las alternativas en el párrafo 4, se refiere a la opción B, en la opción que está entre corchetes, que comienza con are highly reliant on. La propuesta que hacemos es que se agregue in sectors that are highly reliant on. De lo contrario, se pierde el principal componente de la opción, que es la referencia a los sectores para poder identificar a los contribuyentes. Dado que sectores está solamente como una alternativa en la segunda o tercera opción, pero no en la primera. Ese es el cambio menor que proponemos en este párrafo. Gracias.
To contextualize the subject of the option, and also thank you for owning all the brackets and owning all the options on behalf of all the parties. I think they are really your brackets. Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to EU, followed by Canada.
I'd like perhaps to seek your advice on a matter of procedure. I don't recall that the colleague from Chile has made that proposal during the work already. And I think, and that's my problem, I do not have a problem with the proposal, but actually reading through the CRP, I came across many instances where I would have liked to improve the text. I think that you advise that we should only make corrections in the sense that we need to make sure that it needs to correctly reflect the changes that had been proposed during our work. So, I mean, if your advice is different, I think we might be here for a little longer because there are quite some instances where the text actually could benefit from substantive improvement, but I didn't think that that was the point of what we were going to do here. Having said that, I wanted to make 2 comments on this paragraph in view of what had been discussed. One is I thought that all the options were in brackets because they're all objected to. So there should be a bracket at the beginning before option A and the bracket at the end after option D. Secondly, we did, when discussing the text on option B, actually make a proposal, and it's not sort of included in the correct way. in the end of option B, it says sectors to which such users may belong. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. That change will be reflected. I'll now give the floor to Canada, followed by India.
So following on from the EU, I think I don't need to make this point if we're going to add brackets to those options. What I was just going to say is that for consistency, we understood that that verb discussion would apply to many of the verbs, including in these paragraphs, so that may, should, shall, will, all those things. Thank you.
All the verbs in all their forms would be bracketed. So, yeah, that's a good recollection. I'll now give the floor to India, followed by Argentina.
Regarding the options A, B, C, and D, one observation is that, as has been pointed out by EU, we need to keep it in brackets because there are suggestions that we had made which apparently have not been reflected. For the sake of clarity, just want to mention that we had proposed for this option where we are just writing will contribute X, gives a feeling that, that there is nothing specified. We had suggested that, we may add specified and mandatory contribution wherever it is applicable in options A, B, C, and D. So that cuts across all the options. Regarding option D, option C, we had also mentioned a graded contribution up to 1%. So basically not everybody may contribute 1%, but that was suggestion. So these are the two suggestions that I wanted to make. Thank you, Co-Chair.
It was suggested, but
Would you repeat the suggestions?
Made this suggestion and we have also emailed those suggestions. So we had suggested that, wherein, for example, in option A, it says users of digital sequence information on genetic resources will contribute X%. So what is this X%? Is it specified by CBD? Is it mandatory? Or is it on the will of the company? That is not known. So what I had suggested earlier was that here we should write will contribute the mandatory and specified X%. So that makes it objective. That is a mandate and that is an obligation on the part of the concerned user to contribute that specified and mandatory quantity. That is one. And we had made a suggestion in option C saying that across the board it may not be 1%. We could have a graded slab wise, contribution up to 1%. That was in option C. Thank you, Co-Chair.
You mentioned that, but then when we had our discussion, we thought that those issues were well addressed in paragraph 5, and if you can recall, we thought that they would be covered in that part, and maybe if you feel that they are not reflected as you had wanted them to, then we can decide. But we do recall that you did mention that, but we thought that they were well reflected in paragraph 5. Paragraph 5, and I'm just being reminded by my co-chair that the mandatory part that you are referring to was also addressed in paragraph 2, where we have the verbs in brackets that define whether something is mandatory or not mandatory, and they are all in brackets. So we thought this could simplify the text, and I think we are in your hands in terms of whether you feel that paragraph 2 and 5 do reflect your concerns.
I do see in paragraph 2 there is a reference about contribution and mandatory contribution to the global fund. I do see that there. I just felt that when we are talking about options, maybe it is a good idea to specify it there clearly, so that when you're talking about options and the contribution, it comes there in as a package, rather than referring to para 2 and then coming to a conclusion in para 4. So maybe you can reflect on that. That is a suggestion. And option C, that has not been captured at all. So that was another suggestion. So when you're talking about options, maybe we need to specify it, that's all. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, India, and also for requesting us to reflect on that. I think that's what we'll do. And thank you for the flexibility and recognizing that paragraph 2 also addresses those issues, only that you wanted us to reflect if they could also go in option B as you have indicated. So thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Argentina, followed by Brazil.
Very much, Madam Co-Chair, and let me first of all thank you for this final CRP where you have, in our view, reflected practically all the comments that we were making. Just very briefly, in our view, 2, 3, and 4 are very much related, and when we discuss them, they should be discussed all together. So our preference would be to have a bracket from the beginning of 2 to the end of 4 to signal this relation. And in addition, we wanted to ask if you will invite comments on enclosure A after the whole annex, or now that we're going through 4.
Later on, we'll just start with the paragraphs to have a sequence. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Then we'll wait.
All right,
for
thank
that.
you. Okay. Thank you, Argentina. And then I'll give the floor to Brazil, followed by Japan.
That the whole paragraph 4 should be in brackets, because actually the following options are proposed. It's not text, it's not a recommendation text. And at the end, there will be a decision on the option, so it's not adequate that this text is without brackets. We could also go along with the proposal by Argentina of putting both paragraphs in brackets. We would draw attention to the fact that from the 4 options, A, B, C, and D, there's only option D that makes a specific reference to the Global Fund. We think for consistency, there should be a reference, very small reference to the Global Fund in options A and B as well. Option C, of course, does not contemplate the idea of Global Fund, so it would not be applicable. But it would say, on option A, users of digital sequence information genetic resources will contribute to the Global Fund X%. And again, in option B, in line 4, etc., will contribute to the Global Fund X%. That will be one proposal, and I hope this is not problematic, but it's just for consistency's sake, and to be clear that those contributions in option A, B, and D refer to the Global Fund. This is not the case of option C, which is another matter. And the second comment I'd like to make, and I fully acknowledge the comment by the European Union, and we share the concern. We do not want to leave very late tonight. So I raised this. If there is opposition on that, I will drop it, the proposal. But I think it would be useful for all of us to have a capture in option A, one important idea that came forward in the contact groups that were discussed quite at length, and it's not reflected here. Because currently option A is formulated in a way that that stipulates a percentage only of the profits revenue generated by products and services. So it's not present here the option that was debated and was supported by some countries, mine included, because it could be more feasible that the percentage be applied to the general revenue of the company, not only of the products and services. We had a discussion saying that would be quite difficult. It might be quite difficult to ascertain the profits from specific products and services. It could be more feasible to work on a percentage of the general revenue of the company. If you recall, we had this discussion. So if there's no opposition to that, and we hope there is not, we could add some text at the end just to leave this as a possibility, just to leave this as elements that we could have further discussion on, which would say something like their profit/revenue turnover, if they place on the market products and services that have benefited from the use of digital sequence information on genetic resources in their development. So that would be a short sentence just to include that possibility. Of course, again, if parties strongly oppose this, there's no problem. We will bring it anyway in Cali, but just to save us time and to remember to respect also the time that we spent discussing this matter, we think it would be advisable to include this. Thank you.
Brazil, on your first point of reflecting all of the options A, B, and D to the Global Fund, that's a very good suggestion because all contributions are indeed being directed to the Global Fund. On the second proposal, I'm sorry that maybe just to make sure we don't set a precedence in how we continue in this process, maybe it's something we can reflect in the report if you're comfortable, but I wouldn't want to set a precedence where we are collecting new suggestions for texts like we had indicated. So I hope you understand that we just want to be able to move forward and not set a precedence for how we do with the rest of the paragraphs. And hopefully we can be able to reflect all of the new proposals that are coming that were not initially introduced in the report. With that, I'll give the floor to Japan, followed by Egypt. Japan.
B, in the very last part of option B, there should be a word indicative in bracket before list, just following the discussion during the contact group. Then on verb discussion, we agree what was said by Canada. All verbs should be treated in the same way, like will, encourage to, should. They should be all aligned in brackets. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I'll now give the floor to Egypt, followed by Republic of Korea.
To highlight that in para 5, the part that say in line with their individual circumstances was bracketed, should be bracketed.
comments are on paragraph 5. We are dealing with paragraph 4 first because it has got a number of options. So we'll come back to you when we go to paragraph 5. And before that, we had Japan's contribution on indicative. I think Japan has been really talking about inclusion of indicative. So we recall that this was something that you indicated, and also on the consistency in the verbs, which I think we had said we'll apply it wherever the other verbs are mentioned. So we'll reflect that as we had indicated. I'll now give the floor to Republic of Korea, followed by EU.
Regarding paragraph 4, option A and B, I believe that the relationship between the use of design and service appears to be unclear and is still under discussion. So I'd like to have services in option A and B in bracket. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Korea. Loud and clear. I'll now give the floor to EU, followed by Uganda. EU.
I trust that the reference to indicative is in brackets, just to confirm that. I would just like to make the observation that what the colleague from Brazil refers to actually makes option A into option B. So I'm quite confused about that. I think that it would merit better explanation, and I would prefer, as you indicated, if that was not contained, not included in the text as such. Not that we don't want to discuss it, but I think it actually makes the document more confusing because it removes the difference between option A and B. But I don't want to get into the substantive discussion here. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. I'll now give the floor to Uganda.
Thank you, Co-Chair. And thank you for the clarification that the 4 options are actually exploring approaches to contribution to the fund. So if we are going to include global fund to the options, then I do not think that option C is contributing to anything else apart from the global fund. And therefore, equally, option C is a contribution to the global fund. Thank you, Chair.
So that will be reflected. I'll now move to paragraph 5. We had Egypt, because I don't see any more parties on the floor for paragraph 4. So we'll move to paragraph 5. And we had Egypt.
Our recollection is that in line with their individual circumstances is between brackets. Thank you.
And then Canada, Chile.
Con el propósito de reflejar adecuadamente una propuesta que fue señalada durante las reuniones anteriores, en el párrafo 5, en la frase final que señala nothing that the sharing of such non-monetary benefits does not replace any responsibility arising from the provisions 2, 3, and 4. That is the proposal to include a reference to provisions 2, 3, and 4. This is something that was raised during previous meetings, and the idea is to be clear that we are talking about that the non-monetary benefits does not exclude the obligations about the users that are entitled to make monetary contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chile. I'll just come back to you later with a clarification. Just want to check. I'll give the floor now to Argentina, followed by Canada.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We have a similar concern as the one presented by Chile with the interpretation of the last part of this paragraph. We're not sure yet how it should be crafted, so maybe we would just like to reflect with a bracket at the beginning and at the end of this paragraph that we still need to work it around to make it right. Thank you.
I'll now give the floor to Canada.
My observation is similar to Argentina's. I think because this was new language, we didn't quite work through it. We would question whether provisions is the right word, perhaps modalities is more appropriate. But if the whole thing is bracketed, then we don't have to add modalities in.
Okay, thank you very much. I think both Chile, Argentina, and Canada are reflecting on the same thing, trying to make the paragraph make sense. And as such, maybe we can move forward with the brackets, hoping that we'll have a clearer version when we go to Cali. Yeah, so thank you very much. With that, I'll hand over to my co-chair to take us through the rest of the remaining paragraphs. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's very nice to see you on our last evening together. Well, before some long evenings in Colombia, I guess. So, any corrections or very, very high-level changes that need to be made to paragraph 6 or 7, please? UK, you have the floor.
Small addition which doesn't seem to be captured when I had mentioned it, and that was in relation to technology transfer. I'd requested the addition of upon mutually agreed terms. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. Can you be really specific about where that is?
Yep, it's the second line of paragraph 6.
Thank you, and we recall that you made that point, so we can add that. Thank you very much. Brazil, you have.
Put the brackets before build on ongoing activities. We did raise our concern on this, and that bracket will be until after arrangement. I'm also a bit concerned that because I don't think that the first part of the paragraph in its entirety should be bracketed, but I'm concerned that to put the right brackets to allow for a variety of opinions. I don't know how best to capture it. I leave it in your hands, but maybe I could see. I definitely think the first sentence it's of general agreement. But then after that, for instance, the proposal by the UK, I'll have to reflect on that, if it's adequate to have mutually agreed terms to all non-monetary benefits in the context of the multilateral system. So we might need to brackets earlier on. And probably right after, there's a bracket in the form, and that bracket should go, I don't know, until the end. Thank you.
I think the request would be to square bracket everything other than the first. So non-monetary benefits should be shared, retain that, and then square bracket the rest of the sentence. Indicating that that's right. Okay, we'll make that change. Thank you, Brazil.
Mr. Chair, couple of comments. In our view, the discussion of the first line that says should be shared in the form of, and that's in brackets, or I don't understand exactly where it starts, but it was an option to say in the form of, or another option was including through. So this was either a taxative or an open list. So that's an addition that we would like to see. And regarding the reference of the UK of upon mutually agreed terms, we do reckon that that was presented, but we also opposed that proposal. So we would like to see it between brackets. Thank you.
assure you that upon mutually agreed terms is in square brackets, and we will add including through in square brackets because that was text, I recall. Egypt, you have the floor.
So in para 7, inside the last bracket, delete the A, so it should be specific frameworks.
And it should read specific frameworks. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. Let's take comments on paragraphs 8 and 9. And of course, these are corrections or things that need to change in order to more accurately reflect the language you've used. 8 and 9. Thank you very much. Let's take 10 and 11. We'll take 12 and 13. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Mr. Co-Chair, on paragraph 13, the second sentence, which reads, receipts will be issued annually for each year that contributions are made. We'd made some text edits to that, which are actually reflected in paragraph 15 with the relevant brackets around them as well. And I think paragraph 15 well represents the conversation that was had on that particular point. So I do wonder whether the inclusion of that receipts will be issued annually for each year that contributions are made in paragraph 13 might be an error and could come out. If not, then it can go into brackets. But I do wonder whether it's just a typo. Thank you.
A lengthy exchange about this. It's not an error. It does reflect the sequence. We've reviewed a lot of notes on this. It does reflect the sequence of exchanges that we had on the non-paper. I recognise that optically it looks strange against paragraph 15. So our job in sort of replaying back to you the state of the conversation means that that's what's emerged. If you'd like to request that the second part of that sentence of paragraph 13, receipts will be issued annually, if you'd like to request that's put in square brackets, I think we can do that. Okay, you're indicating yes, so we'll do that. Thank you, UK. That's very helpful. I'll take comments on 14 and 15.
Mr. Chair, on 14, colleagues may recall that we have a lengthy discussion on what was the scope of the reference of DSI on GR under the multilateral mechanism. And we said that we were not going to insert a lot of text in this paragraph if we would have a placeholder for definition of what's DSI under the mechanism. So our suggestion, and we couldn't find that anywhere else, so I think it got lost somehow. So our suggestion would be to have this paragraph in brackets and also a bracket that says placeholder for definition of DSI under the mechanism. Thank you.
It got lost because I forgot. So we will make that suggestion, we'll make that insertion for you. So that will say placeholder for definition of DSI under the multilateral mechanism, which I think we agreed at the time is an important conversation to have. Colleagues, the CRP is now available online in all languages. I really want to thank you humbly for your flexibility in working in that period in English. Thank you very much for that. Cuba, you have the floor.
Párrafo 14, el corchete de non-monetary. Realmente no recuerdo quién lo propuso, pero sí recuerdo cuando se adicionó, el monetary contribution, llamábamos la atención de que podía darse a entender que al fondo se podía hacer non-monetary contribution. Sin embargo, tenemos 2 párrafos arriba que aclaran bien cómo sería esta no monetaria contribución, y clearinghouse es diferente, porque además entiendo que se dice que la contribución